I want to share about my experience flying with my baby 26 hours from Philadelphia to Vietnam. Growing up global, your kids gotta fly on some really long flights. And I want to say some of the things I learned while going through that. First thing is, flying with a 5-month-old, flying with an 8-month-old, those are really different because the baby can do so many different things. And so we flew with a 5-month-old. So I want to say advice about flying with a baby is too general. It has to be advice about flying with a 5-month-old. So the first thing we did was, buy our tickets. And we realized that on American Airlines, our first flight, we would have to pay quite a bit of money to move up to the bulkhead row where they have the bassinets for the babies. So we decided not to do that. We read on Reddit that you just arrive at the airport and you request that. And if one of those seats is not yet sold, they'll move you up. All right, a few things. First, those seats are definitely already sold, especially for a really long flight from Philadelphia to Qatar and then from Qatar to Saigon. So no, those weren't available. Next thing is, my wife and I had different reservations. We didn't reserve the tickets on the same reservation. So even if they moved us up, they would only move up one reservation. So we would have been separated even if that worked. So it didn't work. But as a consolation prize, we can board the airplane early. Definitely don't do that, because we did. And we were sitting in an airplane that was hot and the air conditioner hadn't been turned on. And this was well before anyone else got onto the plane. So you give yourself like a almost extra 40 minutes of not going anywhere with the baby, which is the last thing you want. Okay, so we definitely brought too much stuff, not anticipating how little space we would have in front of our feet to put our stuff. So bring less. And we had a middle seat and an aisle seat so that we could get in and out. And we sat in the center big row of the airplane so that our seat partner could exit out their own side. This way our seat partner wouldn't ask us to always get up and down so they could go to the bathroom. So for parents that don't have the bulkhead, definitely if you're in one of the bigger planes, try to take the middle row so that your seat partner can take themselves to the bathroom. Once the plane was ready, we put the little earmuffs on the baby because we heard that was great. She turned out not to really care about those earmuffs, so she only wore them for a bit, and then she didn't wear them for the next flight anymore. So it turned out not to be so useful for her. The first flight was pretty hair-raising for my wife because we were crammed in with a lot of people, and the flight attendants were very suspicious of us because we were going to the bathroom back and forth, and I guess they didn't really realize that I was with my wife and the baby. So at one point, I go into the bathroom before them, and they're behind me, so we're going to change her. And I start to bring down the baby changing table, and the flight attendant says, "Sir, what are you doing?" And I said, "I'm bringing down the baby changing table." And then I point back at my wife, and I realize that the flight attendant doesn't immediately realize that we're together, which is somewhat understandable. Definitely the American Airlines flight from Philadelphia to Qatar was not amazing. Definitely the flight attendants have a really stressful job on that route. They're really just trying to manage a lot of people that might not have that much experience on flights, and a lot of different cultural norms about personal space and whatnot. However, eventually the baby fell asleep in the carrier, so we wore a carrier. We realized it would have been better if each of us wore a baby carrier so that we could pass her to each other, but we actually had to, take off the carrier, pass it to someone else, then put the baby in the carrier, and then move her like that. That was not a good idea. So next time we're flying together, we're both going to wear a baby carrier so we can just pass the baby along the baby carrier and save ourselves an enormous headache. So the first flight was fine, and then we arrived in Qatar, and we went to the family bedroom, or like the family bathroom, and there we kind of used the sink to kind of wash ourselves, and we changed the baby, changed her clothes, I changed my clothes, and then we got onto our next flight. And our next flight was amazing because it was a flight from Doha to Saigon, and there were not many people on the flight. So they upgraded us to the bulkhead. They upgraded my wife for free, but because I was on a different reservation, I actually had to pay $100 to sit next to her, which is why you should always travel together on one reservation, because they told me had I booked it on the same reservation, I would have been upgraded for free with them, like the parent upgrade, but I was on a different reservation. So lesson learned. And they gave us the bassinet. Actually, the baby used the bassinet a bit, but not that much. So we went back to holding her. But having the bulkhead with all the extra space in front of our legs is so good. It's better than having the bassinet, because your baby may not actually sleep in the bassinet, but having all that space is really helpful, because there's so many things that you have to pick up, put down. You have to buckle her at certain times. You have to buckle yourself. So that next flight was such an easy flight because not many people were on the flight, and we basically had the whole first row to ourselves. And the flight attendants were so nice. I thought that they actually were nice. Later, I got on another Qatar flight and realized they're nice to all the babies, but it was such an ego boost for them to be so nice to us. And then we got to Saigon, and we arrived after 26 hours. For a 5-month-old, she definitely cried for the first 2 hours of the first flight, but after that, she was fine. My wife didn't get much sleep. I didn't get too much sleep, but nothing unexpected. My advice for parents, to summarize, is book together. If you can, try to get the upgrade to the bulkhead. If you can't, sit in the center column so that your seatmate can take themselves to the bathroom. Bring less than you think, because once things are just trapped under your seat in an airplane, you can't get them. Go to the bathroom together. Like we would go into the bathroom in the airplane together for changes. Go together. If you only have one kid, go together. When you arrive, go to the family bathroom or the handicap bathroom together and kind of take like a sink shower, change your clothes and everything. And if you can, get the bassinet, but it's not so critical. What's more critical than the bassinet is the space in front of your legs for the flight.